Kal Kadosh, how are you? I wanted to share with you a beautiful, I think incredible, inspirational idea which will actually change our perspective in something so vital and so important in our lifetimes. There was once a story with a poor person that he was collecting, right, going one by one, collecting, right, penny by penny, trying to get his meal, trying to get his food. And once happened, he got to the house of a very affluent, a wealthy person that was living an incredible, huge, enormous villa, big size, everything. The ashir, the rich person, he's sitting in his porch and he's facing the street, but he's deep inside his books and he's writing down different calculations. So he comes and he tells the poor person, wait a minute, I'm in the middle of evaluating all the worth of my properties, and therefore I cannot stop for a minute, because if not, I'm going to get distracted, I'm going to make a mistake. So the poor person, he listens and he says, you know what? It's actually not a bad idea. That sounds like a good idea. So what does he do? The poor person comes, he goes to the other side of the table, and he also starts emptying his pockets and putting down the pennies and counting everything. And he starts making piles of pennies and piles of this and that. So now all of a sudden, the rich person, he looks at the poor person. He's just thinking to himself, what's going on here? This poor person, he's trying to copy me, trying to emulate me. He says, look at the difference. I'm talking about millions and worths of it, and he's counting pennies. So he turns to him with arrogance and he tells him, what are you calculating exactly? What the difference is between what you have and what you're going to need in order to get to my riches, to get to my wealth, my value? So answers the poor person, no, I don't need that. I've already done it in the past and I know it from a long time ago. The richest person is like, what? What is this guy talking about? He already knows the difference between my wealth and his wealth. So he comes and he asks him, what are you talking about exactly? Yeah, what was your maskana? What was your final result? What is the difference between you? So he says like this, I got to the conclusion that we're not actually that far apart. The difference between me and you are 10 golden coins. The rich person gets upset. He says, what? Nonsense! He says, and then he goes back to his calculations. However, though, the poor person, he doesn't stop. He says, I asked people that are understanding, people that are knowledgeable and they know the truth, and they were the ones that gave me this information. So now all of a sudden the rich person gets angry and he says, I don't understand you. He thinks into his mind, this poor person, it's either two things. Either I've got in front of me a kamtzan, some miser that really, he's filthy rich, but he's living like a kamtzan, he's looking like a miser. So therefore, he's got a lot of money, and that's why there's hardly any difference between us. And why is he collecting tzedakah? That's how he's getting it, but really, he's got it, so I shouldn't give him anything. Or I'm talking about a poor person that he's got such an audacity, an azut panim. So anyway, I shouldn't give him a penny. So the rich person turns and he says, no, he demands from him, explain your words. What are you talking about? So the poor person says, I asked the people of the Chevra Kadisha, the people that they bury people, and they told me that there's only two types of shrouds. The shrouds which belong to the poor people and the shrouds which go to the rich people. The difference in price is 10 golden coins. That's the only difference between the rich and the poor. This is an incredible story because I think it's going to teach us a lot of musar from behind it. But first, let's try to delve in the parasha, and then we're going to see how it actually connects to us. In this week's parasha, Parashat Ki Teze, there's an incredible mitzvah called Hashavat Avedah. What is Hashavat Avedah? Any Jew that finds a lost article is obligated, according to the halacha, in a positive commandment to return that lost object to its owners, or to safeguard it, to keep it until the person looks for it and he finds who the owner is. Now, usually the way that you do it is, is you're only going to give it back when you have a good sign knowing and validating that this is the true owner. But there are going to be certain times that, for example, it could even be a fortune. And what's going to happen is you have the signs and still you will be able to come and you will be able to actually use it. You will be able to keep it. When is this exactly? When you know a certain that the owners have already lost hope. If they gave up hope in the object, which means that they lost the object, and for them, there's nothing what to do anymore. They're never going to get it back. The second that they have despair and lose hope, you're allowed to keep it. That's what Halacha says. So for example, let's say there's, whether it's a hurricane or a big flood, and all of a sudden all the things of the houses go everywhere. And what happens is then all of a sudden you find an object which is intact. It was a miracle. It was intact. And what happens, right? You come and you want to keep it. Now the owner is screaming and he's telling you, yeah, no, this, that, I don't give up hope. But ladato, we say that his mind is annulled. We don't even pay attention. Why? But since the majority of people in such a scenario, they do give up hope. So therefore, if he doesn't, that's his problem. But technically speaking, it's his. He's allowed to keep it. If he wants, he could do above and beyond the letter of the law to give it back. And then he gets a mitzvah gedula, but he's not obligated to according to the halacha. Now, where do we learn this from? The Gemara Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Kav Bet Amud Bet says as follows: Amar Rabbi Yochanan b'Shem Rabbi Yishmael. Says Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Yishmael ben Yosadak. How do we know that if a lost object that gets lost in the river is permitted? It says Asher Tova Mimenu, that is going to be lost from him. Mishavuda Mimenu Umtsuya Kol Adam. It's lost from him and found by everybody else. This comes to exclude if it's lost by everybody. The Rashba says, what does that mean it's lost by everybody? It says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it hefker. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the one that made it ownerless. So now listen to this. There was once a professor, a law professor, from the university in Buenos Aires, that he wrote a letter to Rav Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg, the author of the Sridei Esh. And he asked the following question. And he said like this, he said, you should know, I am a person, I'm a researcher, and I teach Jewish Hebrew law. We're talking about law of obviously Choshen Mishpat, different types of laws. And he said, everything that I found, the laws of the Jewish law are incredible. It's very good, except for this that I've never been able to understand. How do you explain Yiyush by Ashavat Avidah? Yiyush means that you give up hope by returning a lost object. He says, what? Because, are you going to tell me now, because of a momentary emotion of despair and loss of hope, that now you've given up, and now that you think that there's nothing left, because of that, you're going to tell me now that he loses out? That this guy is going to lose out? How could it be? That's like a herd of wolves that are just lurking, just waiting for the flock or for the sheep to get caught. How does that make sense? That was the only thing that he didn't understand from the laws of the Torah, which actually makes sense. The Sridei Esh answers him, and he says like this: specifically, in this halacha of Yush, in this halacha of giving up hope, it comes out the difference between Jewish law and the how do the goyim, what their approach is to what is law. What does that mean? The non-Jewish laws, they actually come and they say that you have what's called personal right. What is that? Private ownership. And that is sanctified, it's holy. This is mine, it belongs to me. He says, what does that mean? Since I am the one this is mine, in order for it now to go somewhere else, you need an active act to transfer, right? In order of an acquisition to come to transfer from my property to another property. Comes of this Bala Sridei Esh, the rabbi, and he says, Jewish law looks at it the exact opposite. Jewish law looks at it that really be'emet, every single thing is owned by one and only, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he gives me something, he extended a right of use, which is called the owner's right, but it's not absolute. It's not mine. Who does it belong to? It belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm only allowed to use it. I have certain rights, but they're limited. And therefore, comes the Baal Sri De'esh, and he says something incredible. And he says like this, how do we know that everything is shayach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? La Hashem ha'aretz u'mloah. To Hashem is the entire land and everything which fulfills it. So he says, so what happens now? So now what happens is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes, and he tells us that there are certain halachot of yush, it means it goes back to the original owner. Which means that sometimes if I'm going to give up hope from a lost object, it was never mine to begin with. It always belonged to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I just had the rights over it. I had the usage. Now that I give up hope, it goes back to the original owner, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But now it gives us a complete different prospect, an outlook, something incredible. Why? Because now, because of this, every single time I look at an object, I'm actually looking at it, that it's got some border, it's got something that it's defined. What is it? It's not really actually 100% mine. Why? It belongs to Hashem. So now if something's going to happen, types of damages or anything, I'm not going to say, oh, I lost so much money and I lost this and this is what happened. The opposite. If it was a Gizerah decree from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's better that it was in money and not that it's going to be in Chas v'Shalom in the Neshama or a human being. So therefore, this actually comes and is teaching us an incredible lesson of ethics, of musar. The way our approach to how we're supposed to look at money. The Gemara in Eruvin that we're doing in Daf Yomi of Samech Amud Bet says, Adam nikar bekiso. You can actually test a human being in their pocket. See, their money's smart. What does that mean? If you want to know what a human being is, give them a test with money. Why? Sometimes they're going to come, and when it has to do with money, all of a sudden everything changes, and you see the true picture. Before, and if it's nothing to do with money, he's my good friend. All of a sudden there's a deal, there's a transaction, and it could have gone a little bit sour that I think one way, you think the other. All of a sudden, the true colors come out. They become like animals. They become completely different that you didn't even recognize them. And this is how some people, no, they will still be like a human being, but it's still not the same. And you actually think about it, people their entire lives are hoarding and working and doing more and more and more for what? To gain personal wealth, as if they're going to live here for millions of years, for thousands of years. And we're not here for thousands of years. Once, a Yehudi Chacham said, what's the difference between a person that's very economical, thrifty person, and a person that's a miser, a kamtsan? What's the difference between them? He says, you know what the difference between them is? Proportions. What do you mean by the proportions? The one that's thrifty, that he's very economically smart, and he tries to budget very well, when it comes to certain aspects in life, whether we're talking about Torah, Chesed, Shabbat, education, Chinuch, all of a sudden, he gives everything. He comes and his arms, his hands are open wide because he understands what the importance is behind them, and then he'll do it. The exact opposite is by the kamtsan. The kamtsan, the one that's a miser, he's stingy, he will not do such a thing. Where is this mikor? Where is the source for such a concept? The Gemara Masechet Beitzah, Tetzayin Amud Aleph says, Kol mizonotav shel adam, all the parnasah, all the money that we are going to get are already allotted for the beginning of the year, from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, except that which we are going to spend on Shabbat, Yom Tov, to our children's learning in Talmud Torah, that he says that if right now we didn't pay enough, they will take it away from someone else. And if we spent more, they'll add us from somewhere else. The students of the Ramban right over there, everything that a person is going to gain is already set up on Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, a person should be afraid. Why? He doesn't want to overspend, because it could be that he's going to overuse his budget and he's going to come and start spending everything that he's supposed to have prematurely. Imagine the entire income of the year, he spends it too early. So what's going to happen? There are only certain exceptions. These exceptions are the ones that we just mentioned, whether it's going to be Talmud Torah, whether it's going to be Shabbat, Yom Tov, right? Learning Torah, that concept, the more that you're going to spend, the more that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give back to us. And again, the message behind it is, La Hashem ha'aretz umloah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the master of the universe. Everything belongs to him. which means every single object that we have of materialistic, it's not ours. It's His. It belongs to Hashem Yitbarach, to Hashem. And therefore we have to come and not to look at it that He's taking something away from us. It was never ours to begin with. He just let us use it with these extended rights that we were able to. This will actually change our entire outlook of life, especially now that Parnassah and everything else is juggling in the air, and everything that's going on with the pandemic, that you could see people that they were very wealthy, very affluent, and overnight they've lost almost everything that they had. And then you have everything going around in the world with havoc and everything. We think to ourselves and we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all yours. And everything that we're going to spend, whether it's going to be for Torah, whether it's going to be for Shabbat, whether it's going to be for Yom Tov, whether it's going to be for Torah Mitzvot, we will all get that back. Because all those things actually come back to us. And therefore, we have to understand where to invest. Because the more that we invest in that, the more Kadosh Baruch Hu will bless us and add us on. But if Chas v'Shalom we think that we're just going to hoard and get all this money, but we're not actually going to use it in the proper way, then we realize that it was never ours to begin with. Hashem should bless us, Bezrat Hashem, that we should be able to have a lot of success. We should be able to listen to our Yetzer HaTov, to our good inclination, to continue always doing these things, whether it's being mechabed, honoring the Shabbat, the Yom Tov. There's a Girsa'ot of that says, there's even a text that says Rosh Chodesh, and other things as well, that we continue understanding with a proper perspective. What are we supposed to do in life with everything physical, materialistic, and what's spiritual to understand? Nothing is ours in this world. La Hashem ha'aretz umloah. The shiur has been Leilun Nishmat, to the dear people, to us, that we've just lost very recently. Rav Shabtai Maya Bar Oro, Shenishmito B'Tzor Chaim, Amen. And also Rabbi David Biton Ben Mesoda, Shenishmito B'Tzor Chaim, Amen. We should always hear good news in our community. We should always have simachot and all the blessings, Be'ezrat Hashem. A lot of Hatzlacha, Kol Tuv, Shabbat Shalom.